tagliata, messa fuori, c'è Pirlo, ancora Pirlo di tacco, tiro, gol!
Hello and welcome to the AC Milan Talk podcast. I'm your host Amit Paul and I'm delighted to say that we've finally got a win to assess tonight. Milan won 4-1 at Chievo with Suso, Hakan Çalhanoğlu and Nikola Kalinic getting on the score sheet, while Bostan Cesar also scored an own goal with a brilliant header. So after such a barren run, we've finally got 3 points in the bank, and let's just hope that this is the confidence boost for the players to now go out, get on track and string some positive results together with the Juve game on Saturday in mind. Looking at the positives first from the game, Milan took their goals really well. There's some really nice finishes in there. They did grow in confidence in the second half. I felt like they played much better football as the confidence came back. And, you know, with such a poor run of form recently, it was always going to be difficult. But ultimately, we had to win. It was essential to pick up these 3 points. And on that front, it was job done. Negatives, I still felt for the first 30 minutes or so that there was a real lack of fluidity and just a very disjointed performance, whether that was with our pressing up front, whether that was with when we looked lost beyond the halfway line, we couldn't create anything, and ultimately we had to rely on Suso to create that little bit of individual magic to find a breakthrough. So for me, there was still some definite negatives to take away from the performance. It wasn't entirely convincing, but as I mentioned, 3 points, that's all that mattered, and hopefully this can now spark something. So in terms of manager rating, I've given Montella a 6 out of 10. I still find the fact that he's persisting with a back three really frustrating, even with Bonucci out through suspension. Chievo defended in numbers. You know, they had 10 men behind the ball on a number of occasions. Milan were dominating with possession, and we still had 3 in the back, and it just didn't work for me. There's still question marks over his preferred system, but ultimately you've got to look back at the result, got the 3 points, and key players made decisive contributions. I felt like Andre Silva should have started, Kalinic got his goal, and just generally I think across the pitch everybody chipped in and we got the win. So can't fault him too much, but still there are reasons for me to be a little bit frustrated, so I'm going to give Montella a 6 out of 10. Onto the player ratings, I've given Donnarumma a 7. I don't think he really had that much to do, and he can't be faulted for Walter Bielsa's goal. However, there was one key contribution for him in the game in the second half, where he produced an absolutely brilliant save to fingertip Nenad Tomovic's header onto the bar. So for that reason, Donnarumma gets a 7 for me. Musacchio gets a 6. I felt like there was some poor marking on Tomovic in the first half, which could have proved costly. And again, he just didn't look composed enough on the ball. There were moments where he was in possession and he tried to play it upfield and it just went out of play. That's not something that we saw earlier in the season where he was very assured on the ball, so he needs to get back to that level. But overall, having said that, it was an overall solid performance defensively and he did keep things tight at the back, so credit for that. So I've given him a 6. Alessio Romagnoli gets a 7 out of 10 for me. Produced a really commanding performance, having been moved into the middle of the back three. I thought he was good on the ball in possession, as he always is, clean in the tackle, and he made 1 or 2 really key interceptions in a very impressive outing overall. So Romagnoli, great performance from him. Got the captain's armband at one point as well, so I'm really happy with his performance. I've given him a 7. Ricardo Rodriguez also gets a 7, equally as good defensively as Romagnoli, I felt. Settled into his role in the back three now and continued to display that quality on the ball with his switch of play. He really is good at that, and it pushed Milan forward up the pitch. And I thought Rodriguez had a good game as well, so he gets a 7. Davide Calabria gets a 6. Put in a decent shift on the right flank. I thought he was never really troubled. He didn't really do exceptionally well going forward either. So overall, just a real solid sort of 6 out of 10 performance for me. The big point, of course, is I just hope that he's okay after that really nasty collision at the end of the game. Really heavy contact with the shoulder of the Chievo player, went down, looked really dazed, and he had to be taken off on a stretcher. So fingers crossed everything's okay. Sky reporting after the game that he has already assured his teammates and family that he's doing okay. So let's just hope that he makes a full recovery. Frank Kessie gets a 6 out of 10 as well. Perhaps fortunate for me to not be marked down, because that was just an inexplicable mistake to lead to Bursa's goal. I don't know who he was looking to pass to, but just to give the ball straight to Bursa, who then finished with a great finish in his defence. That was really poor from Kessie, but Having said that, I think he's getting back to his impressive levels earlier in the season. He was tenacious in the tackle, he was pressing really with real energy and high up the pitch. He was powerful with his runs forward and obviously grabbed the assist for Calhanoglu's goal as well. Finally making the right decision in the attacking phase. So impressed with Kessie for the most part, but again, that mistake does mark him down, so I'm going to give him a 6. Lucas Biglia also gets a 6. I think Montella made the right decision in the second half to replace him. He has been looking tired in recent games, and this was no different. More of the same from him in the sense that he's tidy on the ball and he does provide that defensive coverage in front of the defence, but I still feel like there's just that little bit of X factor missing from Biglia's game. But in the circumstances, I'm not going to fault him too much, and I think a 6 out of 10 is a fair enough assessment of his performance. Barini also gets a 6. Put him anywhere in the starting lineup, and this man will do a job for you. You know, we've seen him deployed out on the right as a wing back in recent weeks. Did a great job there. And then he's been moved over to the left in a more advanced position against Chievo, and again, he did a job. Again, you could argue that he doesn't have that bit of quality to really stand out and be a top-class player and a real standout performer for Milan, but he's doing the job asked of him from Montella in different positions, and for that reason, he deserves plenty of credit for me. So hopefully, I feel like he's now beyond the point of being criticised by fans, and I hope that we're all happy with what he's producing for the team. So 6 out of 10 for Barini. Hakan Calhanoglu also gets a 6 out of 10. I thought he struggled in the first half, and he's obviously under real pressure to perform for us. He's an important creative presence in the team, and he just hasn't been performing to the level that we expect of him. So that was disappointing, but hopefully now we've seen a breakthrough for him. Really well taken goal. Delighted to see him get on the score sheet, and hopefully that's a huge boost for his confidence moving forward. It's one that he really needed. And even in the aftermath of the goal, I felt like he was a little bit more expressive on the ball. He was willing to try and get that killer pass through, and so good signs there. Hopefully now he can kick on and really become an important part of this team. So 6 for Hakan. Man of the match for me, Suso, gets an 8 out of 10. Stepped up with a bit of brilliant class to break the deadlock, forced the own goal with a good delivery, then added an assist for Kalanic's goal. Quality performance from him in general, and again, just the most dangerous attacking threat that we had, and I just want to see him consistently have a big say on games. There's moments in that game against Chievo and in recent weeks where he's just been too quiet or not effective enough, influential enough. So fingers crossed this is the level that he can perform at. It's now just a case of finding that consistency in his game. But 8 out of 10 for Suso, brilliant performance, and delighted to see him do well, and he gets the Man of the Match award. Nikola Kalinic gets a 6 out of 10. Didn't offer enough movement in the first half, I felt. I think he looked a little bit isolated. Wasn't helped by a lack of service again. But, you know, to his credit, I think he kept plugging away and eventually got his goal. So a positive from that angle. But again, I don't think he's the solution, if you like, or the answer going forward on a week in, week out basis. Did his job on Wednesday night, but Silva for me has to start in the next game. Substitutes, Manuel Locatelli. I don't think he had a great deal of time in the last 20 minutes to really get up to the speed of the game and have a major impact on it, but I felt like he slotted in well for Biglia, offered more energy, asserted himself well, and just did well to see out the win. So impressive from Locatelli, but again, in the same bracket as Silva for me. I was hoping that he would have started this game. Didn't, of course. And hopefully, you know, we're probably looking at the next Europa League outing for him to get his chance. So good enough for me, 6 out of 10 for Locatelli. Montalivo and Silva don't get marks because they came on too late, but Montalivo just came on merely to add another number in the midfield to see out the win, offered a bit more defensive coverage and energy, getting about and pressing, so good to see him back on the pitch. And then Silva, again, brought on too late to offer him a rating, but the one thing that I would take away from his performance was that he showed the right attitude when he came on. He chased the ball, he was working hard, even though it was only for 10 minutes or so. He could have easily sulked about being still on the bench in a game like this, but I'm hoping that it was with a view of him being in the starting lineup against Juve. So fingers crossed that happens. But yeah, good to see him come on and at least try hard for the team. All in all, good stuff from Milan in terms of the result. Goals were well taken. Happy with the win, of course. Still don't think that it was the most convincing, but you got to take the 3 points and hope that it's something to build on. So fingers crossed we can take this forward now to the Juve game. Twitter comments, starting with Troy Vaughan at Heart the Sound. He was very surprised after the win. Suso was his man of the match. Completely agree with that call. And he's more confident than what he was prior to the game heading into the Juve encounter. Would also agree with that. Everything was a little bit negative heading into the game, but I think you can take positives away from it. and fingers crossed we can deliver another decent performance and result against Juve. Daniel at Dan Rossoneri: other than managing to take our chances, still look rather average, hoping for better things to come. As I mentioned, especially in the first half, the first 30 minutes, Dan, I completely agree with you. Still looking average and lacking the fluidity in our attacking play. No real sustained pressure, and ultimately it was just a bit of magic from Suso that kind of made the difference for us. So in that sense, completely agree with you, and can only be hopeful that better things are to come. Samir Mohammed at Samir Mohammed 72: I really like this formation because it's basically 2-5-2-1 because Rodriguez is always going forward and we're left with two defenders. He wants to know, did we loan backer to get another backer in Kalinic? I do see your point. There's one man that will agree with you on this point, and that is at VA Jack Sparrow on Twitter. He was not a fan of the Kalinic move, as he made it very clear when it happened and throughout the season, and even last weekend he mentioned it. It is a very valid point. Kalinic, again, just hasn't got that sort of movement, the assertiveness to kind of impose himself on the back line of the opposition and really make himself a nuisance. That's what I thought he would offer, but he hasn't. And aside from the goal, he didn't really do much. That is literally the same story for Bacca for the last season. So, yeah, not many differences in that sense. And hopefully I'm seeing, again, even though I did back him and I still back him to have a decent role within the squad, we want to see Andre Silva start on a consistent basis and Kalinic be a backup option, even vying for a place with Cotrone in that role. So we'll have to see how that pans out. But yeah, it's a very valid point. Man of the match for Samir was Suso. If he leaves, this team will lose half of its creativity. You're not wrong there. But I would argue that I feel like there's more creativity in this team. And although Suso is the man to step up, I feel like the way that we're set up, the system that we're deploying, the kind of responsibility does fall on his shoulders too much. I think we need to see more from Hakan, and hopefully, like I mentioned, the goal will be good for his confidence, but we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, I think the system is set up for Suso to shine in that regard. So, hopefully, if there's any sort of rotation and tweaks, then we'll see other people step up and give him some sort of support in that regard in terms of creating for others. So, man of the match for him, can't argue with that. And then flop of the match for Samir was either Kessie or Kalinic. I think they both had decent performances, but I know where you're coming from. Kessie for that mistake, that was just unforgivable. And Kalinic, as we both mentioned there, is kind of the ineffectiveness, aside from the goal, that's definitely a concern. So definite good shouts on those fronts. Brian Johnson at Wise Old BHJ: we are the best side in Serie A at crossing the ball into the one spot with no players. Something that I agreed with him at the time on Twitter. I felt like we were whipping balls into the box when Kalinic was the only man in the middle. And for a team like Chievo, who are set up, who've got defenders who are more than happy to kind of deal with the aerial problems and clear danger in that regard, I felt like we were playing into their strengths. So for me, all round, just very disappointing in the first half with that strategy. Michelangelo at MKIDJ: thanks for sharing this thought on Calhanoglu. It's mine as well. Yeah, I think we both agree in terms of the goal being crucial for his confidence. Hopefully that's a massive boost for him, and he can build on that and hopefully start to express himself more on the ball rather than taking sort of simple, easy way outs to kind of avoid being pressurised even more. So yeah, hopefully this is a little breakthrough for him. Richard Gassi at Gassi Richard 3: Milan still lack identity on the pitch. Results aside, are you convinced Montella can get this team to perform at peak level? Richard, I've got to be honest, I'm still not convinced. Result obviously a massive bonus, a real boost for the team, but like you mentioned there, can Montella get this team to perform at peak level? I still don't think we are. I still don't think the system's right. The back three, even though Bonucci was out, we still stuck with it, and I didn't think that was right, but again, with the result, you can't really argue too much. But ultimately, I feel like we need to see a sustained and consistent run of results matched by top performances to really know and give you the answer to that question. So we shall see at the weekend. Der Holtzfaller on Twitter about Calhanoglu: hope he gets more chances in a familiar position, a worthy number 10. Great to see Suso where he belongs as a winger. Agreed on both points. Hopefully we see more of Hakan moving forward, and Suso, it's no coincidence that the most dangerous and most decisive contributions he made to the team were when he was on the right, cutting in on his left, and that has got to be where he plays or is positioned, regardless of what his role is. that's where he has to be most effective. So definitely agree on that. Bori Oludemi at Borikanes on Twitter. I am still sceptical. Hate to be the party pooper. Chievo played really badly, but happy we've won. That is literally my thoughts in a nutshell, Bori. I can't disagree with any of that. I still feel like we lacked the kind of convincing nature in our performance to really say, yep, we've turned a corner. This is what we're going to now produce on a consistent basis, and we can, compete and get up there and bridge that gap with the top four. That's simply not the case for me at the moment. It's great to get the win, 3 points, absolutely crucial for Montella as well for his kind of short-term future. But still not convinced, so we'll have to see how we get on. Right, guys, that's a wrap for this podcast. As always, thanks for listening. Thanks for your continued support and all the comments on Twitter. I'll be back on Sunday with my thoughts on the Juventus game. As a couple of you have requested, I'll have some company with me to go through the talking points and player ratings. But until then, Forza Milan, and let's hope we get a big result against Juve at the weekend.